Okay, welcome back to the Accepted by Admission Prep podcast. And today we're with Nicola again, who's done a couple of podcasts with us, and we're diving into one of Canada's most competitive undergraduate business programs, which is the Rotman Commerce program at the University of Toronto. So, just to give a little bit of context, each year Rotman receives over 7,000 applications, which is a lot. However, only 500 of those students end up getting admitted. So it's a very competitive program. That makes it, one of the most competitive programs in all of Canada. And that's because Rotman Commerce is consistently ranked among the top undergraduate programs and business programs specifically in Canada. So, in just 20 minutes, we're going to talk about why Rotman Commerce stands out from other business programs, how the admissions process works, including the supplemental application, what students in grade 9 to 12 need to be doing in order to prepare, common mistakes that actually can sabotage those strong applications, and then an expert tips from Nicola herself, who's helped hundreds of students actually get into Rotman Commerce. So thanks, Nicola, so much for joining. We appreciate it.
Yeah, love to be here. Hi, Madison.
Hi. Okay, we'll jump right in. So, my first question for you, Nicola, just to kick things off, is what makes Rotman Commerce such a powerhouse? Like, how do you know if it's the right fit for you, and what makes it such a strong program?
I think, well, obviously it's the school, right? Obviously it's University of Toronto, definitely being, rated the number one school in Canada. I think also just like the location of, where Rotman is, it's like, in the downtown, the heart of Toronto, basically. So that's Canada's, capital, financial capital, and it gives really a lot of opportunities both for like networking for students and then also job placements and internships and that kind of stuff, right? So definitely, I think that's a big part of it. UofT Rotman, it's known globally. So I think, it gives students that, academic presence both in Canada, but also internationally as well. And of course, University of Toronto is known for like its rigor, its academic strength. It's got a great brand, basically. So I think it is probably, it is. It's one of the top business programs, if not, the top business program for sure in Canada.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And I think, from my understanding, a lot of their alumni go on to work at amazing companies like McKinsey, RBC,
Yeah.
Goldman Sachs, even Google, Amazon. So I think it's a very coveted program because there's so many opportunities that, you get opened up to.
Yeah.
Another question I have is, how much would you say that you mentioned location, and how much do you think location and then also networking opportunities matter when you're in business school? Like, how much does that kind of play into your decision about where to go?
Gosh, I think it's like probably I would say, well, I mean, me looking kind of back, from when I went to school, I think it's probably one of the most important things, really, because I mean, your education is about, obviously getting you into the workforce, right? And so if you have those great opportunities and you have the ability to be able to work at a big bank or like top financing firms, consulting firms, startups, like if you get that experience, it's just going to make your resume even better, right? So you'll have a lot more opportunity to land, that dream job once you're finished your undergraduate degree. And then, you're getting a great education. If you want to continue, like if you want to continue with your education, go in a different direction, or get a master's
Yeah.
degree as well. I think Rotman Commerce is also a great place to start.
Awesome. Okay. And we're going to obviously dive into the actual admissions process and what's in that supplemental application and how you can really stand out. But maybe just to start, what type of student is actually going to thrive at Rotman? Because there's no point in applying and going through that rigorous admissions process if, it might not be the right fit for you. So what type of student is going to be successful in a program like Rotman?
Yeah. So I think a student that has that leadership, that takes initiative, someone that is really driven, that likes to collaborate, because there is a lot of that with business, right? There's a lot of working in groups and getting problems and be having to solve them as a team. So I think initiative, leadership, collaboration, really good verbal and written communication skills as well.
Mm.
And ethical thinking, right? Like they really want students that are not only going to be business savvy, but also want to like help out their communities and do like have long term goals in ways that they can really maybe change the world basically. But yeah, on that supplemental, you're gonna look for all of those things, but also like students that are able to reflect, show maturity, show that they've had growth like throughout high school and throughout their experiences as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, okay, well, we'll dive into Rotman Commerce, specifically their supplemental application. So, I guess the first question, Nicola, is how does the OUAC application work for Rotman, and what deadlines should students be aware of for maybe University of Toronto in general?
Yeah, so University of Toronto, it is one of the schools that has early admissions for some of their programs. So definitely Rotman Commerce is one of those. It's highly competitive. I know we haven't kind of talked about grades yet, but definitely with Rotman, I wanted to say like you're definitely going to need a mid 90 target. Like that's sort of what that's basically what you're going to need to get into. I mean, sometimes if you're supplemental is absolutely outstanding. If you've built up that leadership experience that really can show initiative and great communication and all of that, then that's great. A little bit of a lower mark might get you there, but
Yeah.
typically what you're aiming for is mid 90s. And then yeah, so like when you start applying to U of T, they do have deadlines as early as December the 2nd. So that gives you a little bit of a competitive edge. If you are applying early, it shows the school that, obviously you're committed, that you're ready, that, you're determined to actually get into that school. Right. So yeah,
Mm.
so December 2nd. But usually what we recommend to students is to get that OUAC application. So send off that first part of your application early on. And that could be done as early as like late October, early November.
Okay, that's good to know. And so you touched on grades a little bit. So you're saying mid 90s is kind of the spot that's going to get you to at least that, competitive point where they're going to look at that supplemental application, seriously. So
Mhm.
when you say mid 90s, like are you saying around 95%? And is that the like core average? Is that your overall average? How should a student be thinking about that?
Yeah, so definitely that's your core average. You're gonna that's your core for your top like 6 classes, but the obviously the prerequisites that you're gonna need to get into Rotman Commerce or to apply to Rotman Commerce basically is your English. It's mandatory. They want advanced functions and calculus as well. So they will look at your overall average, but they will, definitely that those math marks are going to really stand out because business is, especially commerce is, there is a lot of finance. There's a lot of like math involved, like especially in your first year of your education, right? So, doing very well in your advanced functions and calculus is going to definitely help you. But I am talking about an overall average. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's good to know. And so, with that, if you say you have that 95% average, you're a student, you've worked really hard, you're heading into grade 12, you're about to write that supplemental application, what can we expect to see based on, you've many years of looking at these applications and helping students through
Yeah.
them. So, what can we expect to see on a Rotman Commerce supplemental application? What are kind of the components of it that we
Yeah.
can expect to see?
Yeah, well, the Rotman it's different. It's definitely a different type of supplemental because there is a written component. And there's also like a video interview. So it's not. I mean, I think we've talked about this in past podcasts. Some of the engineering supplementals have this as well, but really what they're trying to do is just kind of see how you answer questions on the spot, right? And how you're again your written communication is on the spot. So they're timed on the timed video responses. And then there are some written components that you can get ready prior to your actual application. But yeah, like again, they're going to be looking for that maturity. They don't want perfection. Absolutely not. So I think a lot of students, they really worry and they practice and they worry so much about like, what if I flub up or I say, I scramble for words or something like that. That's probably not going to destroy your interview. Absolutely not. I think it's more about just showing that, you have thought about what you're going to say. You do have some really great leadership, initiative to talk about,
Mm,
you're able to show the reflection, your maturity, your growth through your answers. So definitely leadership counts. And having, those activities that show that leadership and show initiative, but really being able to tell Rotman Commerce like what skills you developed, like what things
mm.
you've learned through those specific activities is probably the most important thing.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. And um is it helpful or not helpful for students to try to tie some of like their experiences from high school to, maybe the things that Rotman might care about or how that might impact the school once they get there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Because certainly schools, and this happens with every school, certainly schools um, care a lot about, what you've been a part of, what you've done, like how high school has really prepared you,
Yeah.
how your activities have really prepared you, but they care probably even more so about what you're going to bring to that school.
Right.
Why are you going to be a great student or a great part of like the Rotman community. And so those skill sets, yeah. And that's basically what I was saying is like showing them that, through this initiative, I learned how to delegate. I learned how to work with a team. I learned how to problem solve. Those are all the key things that Rotman is going to be, looking to see. Do you acknowledge that you've actually learned those things? And
Right.
are those some of the specific skills that you're going to bring to the student body and to your Rotman community?
Okay, awesome. And so, it's the summertime right now. We have a bunch of grade 11 students that are about to head into this process.
Yeah,
How can students be preparing in the summer for an application like Rotman Commerce? Is there a specific set of things that they can be doing in
yep.
order to ensure that they're not overwhelmed when September hits and suddenly they have, their classes, they have applications, they're writing a bunch of essays? How can they prepare for that in July and August?
So in July and August, I'm telling my grade 11s right now that I'm working with is, the best thing that you can do, like if your grades are really good, they were really, really strong, that's a great thing in grade 11. I always say grade 11, it matters probably more so than grade 12
Mm,
because if you're applying to, again, Rotman, and you're doing it by the early admission deadline of December 1st, you have to remember that the schools are only really going to see what you've done in grade 11 and before that, right?
mm,
They're not going to get much of what's happening in grade 12. And so a lot of times they rely on those grade 11 marks. Like, okay, like let's see, what they're doing. And they might be able to give you that early admission offer if
mm,
you've done a great job. Sometimes that doesn't happen, or a lot of times that doesn't happen, and you have to wait. Students will have to wait a little longer and just see how that grade 12 progresses. So I always just say, like, make sure during your summertime if you can do anything you can to get ahead and maybe learn some of the curriculum that you're going to be working on in grade 12, get as far ahead as you can. You can use things like, Khan Academy. There's other websites that you can go to that are free that,
mm,
you can get ahead on that, those your academics basically.
mhm,
And then anything that you started, you should be starting your initiatives well before grade 11. Like that's grade 9, that's grade 10.
mm,
Um, but now you're basically, you're growing them, you're trying to set new goals maybe. Um, and trying to surpass those goals. Those are great things. You want to expand. Maybe you want to leave some sort of legacy or figure out how are you going to at those clubs at school, how are you going to pass them on to future leaders, right? Because those are things that Rotman will love to see as well, is that you just didn't get into grade 11 and decide, oh, I got to do something,
right,
and start an initiative and then just kind of forget about it, right? It's all
right.
about that process of being a leader and then passing things down as well.
Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense, and we've talked a little bit about, what you should be doing if you're in grade 11 or grade 12, but you did touch on, grade 9 and 10
Mhm.
students. So, let's talk about strategy for students that still have a lot of time in grade 9 or 10. If their goal is Rotman Commerce, which is still a few years out, how can they be, preparing for that process even earlier than, say, a grade 11 student?
Yeah. So I would say, again, number one, focus on like building a really strong academic foundation, especially in math and English, because those are your two prerequisites. So, you want to be able to get that early, because it's going to get harder as you get into grade 11 and 12, like much harder. Start getting involved. Like if you aren't already, like join clubs, you can volunteer, start a small initiative. Like definitely Rotman loves to see that entrepreneurship. Like starting a small business is a great idea. Anything, right? Taking on leadership roles. I love student council. I think I speak about this all the time. I love student council because maybe you can't do it in grade 9 or 10, but maybe do some of the things that might get you to student council. Ask if you can join, ask if you can go to the student council meetings and just be a part of it to learn, because it's a really, really great way to not only just get a natural leadership role. Like if you're in student council, you're advocating for your student body, you have that leadership role right in front of you. But I think student council also gets to branch out into like other areas of the school and into the community as well. So it's a great way. Anything, clubs, DECA is a great thing to join for sure. Leadership, leadership, leadership.
Yeah.
Just start thinking about like, why is business right for you? Like, what are the big things that you want to do eventually, like 10 years from now? And
Yeah.
start to get familiar with that and think about, what are some of those big long-term goals that you want to do like in the business world?
Yeah, that's a really good point because we saw a lot last year in the video component of the application, which makes students often very nervous.
Yeah.
What we did see some of the questions around, why business? Like, why are you pursuing business? What are your career goals in business? So,
Yeah.
beginning to kind of have some idea of, why you even want to go into business as a field is really good to start thinking about early on and can help to kind of dictate some of those initiatives and leadership roles that you end up taking on.
Exactly, exactly, yeah, you definitely have to know. I mean, that's something that stumps a lot of, like, I find a lot of students, they just like, well, they have maybe heard from parents, or they have heard from friends, or maybe they had an older brother or sister that went into business, and so they thought, or they're following somebody that they admire, right?
Mhm.
Which is all great things, and that's kind of maybe where you start from, like, that's a basis of, like, knowing maybe business is the right direction for me, but you have to do more research, like, you have to, give yourself those experiences so that you can explain, yeah, when I knew I wanted to go into business, I also decided to join DECA, and I joined my business club and student council, and all of those clubs, they gave me those skills that are, I think, really needed to be a great business person,
Mm,
and then start thinking, yeah, about the big goals that you have in
yeah.
the business world. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. That makes a lot of sense. So, in the last
Mm.
couple minutes that we have, we're going
Yeah.
to talk about mistakes to avoid on the application. What are some of the no-nos on the application as you go through that process? So, um, well, maybe I'll start with this question because everyone gets really worked up about the video interview, that
Mm.
students get very nervous about it. How do you go wrong with the video interview component versus maybe what makes a great response in the
Sure.
video interview?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, underestimating it, like leaving it to last minute, and just thinking, oh, I'll practice a couple of times and then I'll be fine. No, because you just will not be like, you'll just not be prepared. I've seen it happen, and your video interview, it'll come off weak, and because honestly, Rotman, good grades are not enough for Rotman Commerce. Like, they're really looking for students that have that overall kind of wow, right?
Yeah.
Like, they want passionate students that, know where they're going, that have that like sort of sense of like, yeah, like I really do know where I'm going, and I've done all of these things. So having it doesn't have to be perfect, but a well constructed set of answers, some set answers that kind of like are about your activities and about the things that you've been a part of in high school is definitely essential. So don't underestimate, and be prepared, I would say, is probably the biggest thing. I think the second is like generic answers, right? Just saying like, I just really like business because, I
Yeah.
just, I like, right? Not really having specific reflective stories is a big mistake as well too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then just poor video prep. Like, I think students, even if you have this, everything's great. You have some great answers and you've done all the work before that. If you don't practice and like don't time yourself and have someone watch you and just go over and give you some like feedback on how you are answering those questions, I think that's another big mistake as well.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's really good for students to know. Small things that can make a big difference in your
Yeah.
application.
Yeah.
Okay, and then last question, how important is authenticity in the application versus, say, trying to sound business-like or, like, overly professional? How do you balance that in this application in particular?
Yeah. So the way to do that, honestly, like don't first of all, don't worry so much about those little things. Like you are gonna mumble once in a while. You might, have to backtrack a little bit. That's absolutely okay. I think authenticity is key. And the way that you do that is by being really specific with your answers. So,
Mm,
like, if you're talking about a certain activity, say you're talking about student council, you're not just saying, student council, you're actually talking about your role in student council. You're talking about the things, the actions, the things that you did in student council, no matter how little or how big they are. And then definitely talking about like the results of like, what you accomplished, the impact that you made. And then really important what you learned, like, what types of things did you build, that resilience, did you build that grit, like what kinds of things, did you find really came out of that specific activity. And it's really great. Authenticity also comes from like talking about your mistakes, right?
yeah,
Talking about, because everyone fails.
yeah,
So being able to talk about that failure, but like what you really learned from that failure is super, super important. And it'll definitely catch the eyes of the admission committee for sure.
awesome. Okay, well, I think that's a wrap for today. So, if you do wanna know whether your profile is competitive for Rotman or not, or if you want help with your supplemental application, you can, of course, always book a consultation with our team at admissionprep.com. We've helped obviously hundreds of students and Nicola specifically through that Rotman Commerce application process. But at the very least, hopefully this was super helpful for you. And Nicola, thank you so much for
Great.
sharing that insight. I know that I appreciate it, and I'm sure other students and parents will as well. So thank you.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye.